Episode 21,
Ready?
baby.
1, 2,
Woohoo.
3.
1, 2, 3.
Hey!
Wow.
Fucking hell.
One of them's gone.
Jack's
That is
struggling,
messy.
Come on, Jack.
Oh.
Oh yeah, no, that's not a house. It's a room. So yeah, you can't rent the. Yep. So, all right, bye.
I do understand about conservation, and we want to do the best we can for the project, but
Every business owner has to deal with problems and create solutions, and that should be 90% of your role, which we've done.
Oh, these are like lovely, and the architecture sort of. And I just said I'd still demolish them and build a block of flats.
No
I was
care
like-
for it whatsoever.
Yeah, and you was just like, oh my
Crazy.
god, what did you just say?
Are you sure? These are nice buildings, mate.
Yeah.
Ground up sound. Ooh, yeah. Real estate deals. We lay them down. Let's get those deals. Deals. Deals making money, baby.
Where you going? You going? Where you going after this? Ascot.
I've got to go Windsor. I've got to go to Twickenham and to Ascot. So I was with a heritage guy yesterday. So we had to go around and spend about 4 hours checking every single nut, bolt, nail, timber section. Fucking hell. I mean, there's one room. There's about 6 different pieces of architrave that have all been pieced in, and he's like, "Well, that bit's original. We should really think about keeping that." I'm like, "How about I just take the good length that's going straight through my new staircase, and I ply it off as best I can, aka get a new bit cut, probably matched with pins so it all matches the exact detail, and whip it around in nice new pieces, because I don't want to really build a bit of a dog's dinner. I'd rather build it looking nice." Anyway,
Yeah.
there's a long length that we need to take off and carefully put somewhere else. Apart from that, some of the stuff we met the conservation officer from the council, and he wasn't worried about a lot of this stuff, but some of the stuff he was worried about, the heritage guy was like, "The guy has no idea. This needs to come off. You can do it like this." I was like, "All right, we'll just put that in your report, and I'll take off the iron bars that makes it look like a prison around the back." He's like, "They're not original. It used to be a draper's." Well, you got. I'm like, "I don't really want the prison bars overlooking my new Airbnb. Come to our local prison." And no, he was fine with a lot of the stuff that I was right about. So yeah, no, it was a good meeting. But this morning I've got to go and meet the sound guy. So
Do you think that I know this is going to come across really bad, but do you think that there's lacking like this dose of common sense when it comes to this thing? It's like you walk in a room, like I've had this experience where you walk in a room, everything's been ripped off, and you've got this last piece of, whether it's skirting or one length of architrave on one side of the door, that's like what they think is original and everything else isn't. So it looks really weird anyway. And they're like, yeah, you need to keep that bit and everything else you can change.
100%.
And you're like, what? That makes no
It is-
sense. Like,
So we've got on the second and third floor, there is like 2 of the 4 walls that have got the original cove in. Now the cove in is it's only 3 inches by 3 inches. It's got little. I'm going to do a little video on Instagram, but little balls of it's got little rounded edges. It's only 3 inches by 3 inches, and he wants us to keep it, but obviously we've got to go off fire and sound and everything else in an existing conversion. Oh, and the council reckons that the second and third floor, sorry, the third and fourth floor, we're going to have potentially loss of office space. But on the VOA, it's always shown the VOA as staff room, ancillary, and wait. So we're not actually, only the first floor is office, which we're going to turn into a restaurant or into a cafeteria. So yeah, that was the first fight. And then obviously the coving that we've got to keep up on the third and fourth floor, we've said, yeah, we'll keep it, but we'll just basically put our fire and sound right over the top of it, plaster it in so it stays within the building. And he was fine with that. So it's madness at the end of the day. I mean, these buildings are, and we've got photos now from like 1900s all the way through with all the different people who have been there. All the shop fronts changed and the ram raids have come in and come out. I mean, it's like, it was fine for them back in 1920, 1925, 1930 to make all these changes, do what they like. But now 2024, that they care about that bit of skirting that they've hacked around for the last 100 years. I do understand about conservation, and we want to do the best we can for the project, but there is a line between.
But Stu, in
AWC.
1920s, it wasn't heritage; it was current. So why
It's
would they
original,
care
yeah.
about
It's
it?
modern. It was
It's
modern
just
build.
normally what they do. Dorian, a funny story that we had in one of our HMOs. We had this plywood door that was fitted on one of our. It was back then a living room, but we wanted to obviously make it a bedroom. And for fire route protection, we needed to make sure that people could get all the way through the building with 30-minute fire protection route. And I sort of called the heritage officer on it. I was like, this door's plywood. I've even taken the door handle off so you can see the grade of the timber. And it's just flat out 1980s plywood. She was like, no, I think it's a stable door from fucking when Jesus was born. It needs to be preserved. Oh, for fuck's sake. So now then I had to fit surface-mounted intermittent strips because I couldn't route to the door because it's literally that wide, and paint it with intermittent paint. And I full well know that I've completely satisfied everyone from a fire perspective. So the fire firm have signed it off, but that door is not going to hold together as well as a brand new door with routed intermittent strips and a proper FD30 fire door. But we have to keep it. What I've done actually, Stu, in our Wallingford
Move it
project,
to the bathroom.
what I've done,
Can you move it?
Yeah, so what I've done in our Wallingford project is taken all the doors off, stored them in a loft, and fitted all new doors. Because
It's kept them on site.
Yeah.
We've got one door on the 4th floor, which is an old original door. It's got signs of historical value, as actually I'd love to keep saying. And yeah, we just said we'll just move it to the bathroom. But it's a 4-panel door. You know, you can get 100 of them down at Holden's. It's a full pine door. You know, painted white. It's nothing crazy.
This is an interesting one. Apologies, by the way. My when you was talking last time, Stu, my mic just cut out. So you was talking and making hand movements.
You having mic troubles?
You didn't miss much, mate. I was rambling on. I've just woken up. It's 6:30 in the morning for the viewers, or it's 7:30 now. But yeah.
And but anyway, I've technical glitches. I've got it back working. But we're working on a site now, and I kid you not, we looked at this site 5 years ago. Had an offer accepted 5 years ago. Went through the planning process. 5 years later, it's still undeveloped, and the reason it's undeveloped is because conservation. It's literally unfortunately, is one of those. It's like a ruin, right? That's just only attracts antisocial behaviour. But from like a conservation point of view, they're saying, you know, it needs to be restored. But like, there's no money in it to restore. There's no viability to restore it unless the council put money towards it. But no one wants to put money towards it. The council, heritage, and no. So like, what do you do then? You know, they would rather a ruin that everyone's already confirmed they're not putting money towards, versus, you know, taking photos, listing it in an archive for the historians, and then building something actually usable. What's your thoughts on that?
You'll get some twat that goes, "Oh, I really love this building. I've walked past it for years. I'm going to go on Grand Design and spend 2 million quid building a 300 grand house, and then it's sorted, Dorian. All you got to do is wait a century for that. There'll be one dickhead that comes along."
When you coming down to Wales, then, Jack?
My car insurance doesn't let me drive that far. I'm not allowed to cross the bridge.
Yeah. I mean, how much have you guys dealt with heritage? Because we've got them coming up to a site soon that's a listed building.
So just on Dorian's point quickly, just on Dorian's point. So yeah, exactly. You get some sovereign wealth fund that will sit on it. Or the guy yesterday was said that because there was enough evidence that it was originally a bank, and all the information he's collected, he said, what I can do is give you all the information. You can basically make an information board and just stick it up in like a couple of nice places and make a bit of a feature as you go up the staircase at the back, and that'll give the public enough information to know about it. But yeah, if it's an old shitty building, you know, why don't you just rip it out, do it new, and then just take all the photos and all the evidence and display it for what it used to be used for?
Sometimes I make a couple of statements, and for any listener out here, I don't really mean this literally, but sometimes I'm a little bit controversial just because it's funny, especially around friends. So when we went to Edinburgh, I think it was with you, Ryan, wasn't it? And we was driving around Edinburgh, and we were saying, because we was in Edinburgh and we was going down to your place, and he was looking at all the buildings, and you was like, oh, these are like lovely, and the architecture and stuff like that. And I just said, I'd still demolish them and build a block of flats.
No care for it whatsoever.
Yeah, and you was just like,
Crazy.
oh my god, what did you just say?
Are you sure? These are nice buildings, mate.
Yeah.
I love it. I love a historical building. I'd rather the challenges,
same.
and
Same.
yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
just beautiful, man. And
They
I love
are-
the old cult.
To be
you know,
fair,
the old
I'm all for keeping the external facade. Like, if you've got a beautiful external facade, I think that's fair. Like, to keep it in situ. Maybe there should be some more leniency around the windows. But internal shit, I'm like, the only people that'll ever see it are the occupiers of that building. You're talking about 5 or 6 inhabitants, maybe.
Not if it's for public
Like,
use. So if it's for public use, the
Well,
public
yeah,
enjoyed
fair,
it so many times. And also the
No,
two
fair
other
public
points
use,
he
yeah.
mentioned yesterday was the windows, which we wanted to replace. So we've actually found an old photo, which I got very excited about, because the old photo had French doors on the first floor to ceiling, that you could open inwards, where the windows at the front, he was okay with us because they were the commercial. So it's 3 floors above ground. Top 2, we're going to turn to residential. So we've got EPC, even though the heritage over sales or supersedes the EPC, the heritage statement will supersede him. The windows he was talking about, you can get the 8mm glass, which is like vacuum glass, so you get a bit of a better sound, bit of a better EPC. You have to putty into the existing. But the doors at the front, I was quite excited because they had like a little balcony, almost like a little, like almost on the front of Buckingham Palace on top of the building. I'm like, bang, let's reinstate that. It might cost us 30 or 40 grand to reinstate it because the ledge is there anyway. But let's put it on the planning app and see what they say, because it's going to be effectively a tea room. So if they can have some space at the front, we'll potentially go back to the tenants and say, look, we can build this out. Will it increase your annual rent, which will be great because they do want to try and get a bit of outdoor space just so it draws people in. And I think they will. I mean, they've already gone up 5 grand just to secure it, so they're very keen
please,
for the location.
Mr. Landlord, but I don't want to pay any extra for it.
That's exactly what I think they're going to say. Yeah, we'd love it. We're not paying you for it, but we'll have it. But it will make the building look original. And the photo, I don't know, I'll send it to you guys so you can put it up. But the photo at the front with the balcony does look really good. But sorry, on the inside, you're saying about not keeping stuff. There was this old like cabinet behind the stairs, which I didn't know if it was original or not. And then the guy turned up within 5 seconds, like, absolutely no way. There's no way in the Victorian era they'd let any of these hacks and cuts and joins be acceptable. And then when you sort of appreciate the sort of craftsmanship of the Victorian era compared to what we do now, it's the quality of work. So yeah, I do think we should keep some of that because it was a different league in craftsmanship compared to what we do now.
I actually got interviewed by some random guy in like Virginia about craftsmanship of work and why we're building differently nowadays. It's quite a funny YouTube video. He's very sort of like dramatic about the modern architecture. But anyway, just to sort of like Ryan's original question was like, have any of us dealt with listed buildings? And I like for our listeners out there, we tend to budget double the time for a listed building and 25 to 30% additional budget in the build contract for a conversion, upgrade, refurb. But we've done quite a lot. We've actually got 3 listed HMOs. Our oldest HMO is from the 1400s. It's a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom HMO.
Fucking hell, 1400s.
Yeah. It's next to the oldest pub in Abingdon, our HMO.
You got a picture of that? We'll get that up on the screen. That'd be cool.
Yeah, East and Helen Street. I can show you an image of that. And we've got 2 projects in quite heavy delivery at the moment. Wallingford, the building that was falling over, the one that doesn't have a foundation. We actually found a scribe, an advertising bit of paper in the loft the other day from 1799, dated 1799 bit of paper, which we actually think is older than the building, which is peculiar. So they obviously moved it into that building. And we're currently converting an old butcher's in Marlow on the high street to 8 Muse apartments and houses as well. But listed isn't something you need to run away from if you've got the right team and the right budget and the right timeframes allocated. Make sure that you agree on a conditional contract because you don't want to be buying something, hemorrhaging the site, not getting the listed building consent. Because obviously when you get planning consent on a listed building, you need to get planning consent and a separate application for listed building consent. And one really important thing that a lot of people look past is if you get a planning enforcement on a site, it's normally a matter that you deal with direct with the planning. If you breach any form of listed building consent or there's an enforcement on a listed building, it's actually a criminal offence. So you can actually go to prison for not abiding by listing sort of parameters that you need to make sure that you're abiding by. Another thing that is super interesting is normally when you buy a site and crystallize the ownership of buying a property, you don't inherit all the prerequisite issues, planning changes, planning decisions that the prerequisite owners have made. When you buy a listed building, you inherit all of that liability. So if someone has already, so we bought a property, which is a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom HMO. It was actually our first listed HMO, and the previous owner had ripped all of the windows out the back of the building and replaced them with UPVC. So I documented it and wrote a statement to the heritage officer saying, before we've bought this building, this has already been changed. I'm not taking liability for this. When they came to site, they sort of said, we don't have a problem with this. And so I was like making sure that liability wasn't carried with me. If anyone is buying a listed building, you can actually join, I can't remember the club, it's like Heritage England. It's a club, you pay like 100 quid a month. 100 quid a year. You become a member and they offer guidance, free consultation for you. So if you call them up and say, I've got this issue with planning, they sort of help you through that particular problem. Obviously, if you've got a good
Can you write
heritage
me a letter?
consultant on it, yeah, obviously, if you've got a good heritage consultant on it, they're probably they've got badges, sewed onto their laptop bags of heritage anyway. But yeah, it's a little bit of a tamed beast that can be really good opportunity because a lot of people run away from it. But they're sort of some top tips that I would share. But
Good
we love
nuggets
them.
there, Jack.
And if you can
Nice.
prove that you're a considerate constructor builder as well, because like they do want someone. If you can prove that you're going to obviously do things to the building to improve it and enhance it, they will give you a bit of flex as well. Like you can offset some of the things that you need to do in order to. Like we're going to reinstate an existing chimney. I've got another site where we've got the original fireplace, which matches identical to the one that we've got there, and we're going to bring that from another site and reinsert it for one of our flats above. There was those little bits like that. We were just saying we wanted to go over and above, and then we showed them existing examples as well, like Amelie Place, the front where we took the chimney down and reinserted the triangle gable on the front. We're just constantly building this armory of evidence that we're trying to do the best we can for the buildings, and show our passion and love for the old stuff. They love it. They get off on it, and
I would agree,
nice
and
way
especially with Jack's point, I think the biggest mistake people make when doing projects is that they've underestimated, because they've not done before, the time and the potential cost implication for getting the relevant consents. So like every time we look at a deal, and we still look at listed and conservation, but we won't complete until we've had meetings and ideally walkarounds with either the conservation officer or heritage, because like we looked at one building before. It was a huge building, turned into like 50 flats, and the simple decision, like in terms of keeping or reinstating original flooring versus allowing us to change the flooring, which would have allowed us to dig down, insulate, bring up the regs, etc., would have had massive cost differences across the whole building. Just one in that, even one simple decision, and there's dozens and dozens and dozens of them. So that's the biggest problem. As long as you've done that and you're going in with your eyes wide open, you should come out all right.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, mate.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so the house with the sign on it is our HMO that we bought 2 years ago. It's a 3-bedroom. It's a 4-story house. So it's got a lower basement, ground floor. The previous owner was actually a really meticulous builder and done a fabulous job of refurbishing it all. But where he was missing a trick was he was letting out 3 bedrooms because he couldn't let a bedroom in the basement because there's no natural light. But we come along and we know that you don't need natural light in a living room. So we put one stud wall up on that immediate floor that when you walk up that staircase to create a new bedroom on the right-hand side to create the 4th bedroom. There was already 4 bathrooms. And now it's a unlicensed HMO because it doesn't need Oxfordshire doesn't need licensing. So we got a 30-minute protection route from top to bottom, 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom HMO. We bought it for $330. We're now refinancing it because we put it on another top tip. I know we've done a hot HMO masterclass last week, but if you buy a HMO and the build costs are very, very small. So for this particular building, we did new flooring finishes, completely redecorate and put up that stud wall and fitted an L2 fire system. So our total build cost was £18,000. That's not worth buying a refurb development facility. So we bought it on a buy-to-let mortgage, or on like a HMO buy-to-let mortgage on a 2-year fixed, funded the works in cash. Now the 2 years is up, we're refinancing it out into a 5-year fixed. So we bought 330, spent 18 on it, and we're revaluing at 475 on a 5-year fixed.
Yeah, literally, is it this one, the one literally just to the left of the King's
Head?
Here?
Yes.
So this is the old your arrow doesn't, the mouse doesn't come up on screen.
Brick built, white bottom, yeah?
Brick the one with the Andrew sign, the ones with Andrew sign. This one here.
Yeah.
The only thing I think it's all the only just for listeners heads up. Depending on which buy-to-let mortgage lender you go with, some of them won't allow you to go onto a product and then make some like material alterations. They call it on a buy-to-let.
He's basically done that illegal. He's done that illegal.
You're illegal, Dad. You're illegal, mate.
He might have had consent. Some do consent, but
So before we completed on the site, we had listed building consent and full planning consent. Because it wasn't any like real material changes. Obviously, like most of it, other than the stud wall, was actually was
One sec.
actually
Guys, before the missus goes away, can we just do these so I can watch my daughter's face? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Guys,
of
can
course.
we
got different
guys can
colours.
we just do these?
We'll carry on. Can we just do these? Because I want to see
Yeah,
that.
See his face down there.
Right.
Fucking hell. All right.
You're gonna
For the
say,
benefit
go on, right.
of the listeners, it's episode 21. This was our goal to get to. So Stuart's
Episode
idea was
21.
to get 30 cannons. Episode 21,
Ready?
baby.
1, 2,
Woohoo.
3.
1, 2, 3.
Hey!
Wow.
Fucking hell.
one of them gone.
Jack's
That is
struggling. eh?
messy.
Come on, Jack.
Oh,
Hey! Look at all
Wow,
this.
look at that.
Hey!
Nice,
Right, have a good
mate.
day, anniversary. Mwah.
Have a good
I
It's
day.
bought,
going to
bought
take ages
a
to
hat.
clean up.
I bought a hat especially for Dorian as well.
Yeah. It's America. They need some
Oi, mate.
democracy.
Oh, I'm not being funny, but that has gone everywhere. That's like everywhere.
I said down the group chat. I've just done a selfie as well.
I mean, Stuart says he's going to get his missus to clean it up, but
Yeah, innit?
Right, boys, we have got a bit of a. Yeah, no, the missus
Hello.
already going mental. No, she's fine.
Hello,
Mrs.
little
Hudson.
man.
hello, Hudson.
Hey, Huds,
Hello.
say hello. Hello. He's got his helmet on because when he was born, his head was a bit squashed, so he's got it fixed. What's up,
He
man?
just,
And you, and you?
just punched the helmet.
Oh, mate, it's great. It's like a little crash helmet, so you can knock his head on the radiator. He doesn't even know. Or
Yeah,
you can,
bless
he's,
him.
he's fallen off the bed and the sofa, and he
Yeah.
don't even know, do you, mate?
When can it come off now, Stu, or you're not sure?
Basically he's on the the matrix. How they measure it, it's like green, amber, red. So he was just in the amber, and it was like
Oh, okay.
it was worth it. You know, he'd thank us when he gets
Yeah, yeah.
older. He's now in the
Yeah,
green.
not bad.
Because
Oh,
we already
good,
bought the
amazing.
helmet, that we might as well just leave it on for another 2 months until his head stops growing. Because the
Yeah.
idea is they've taken one quarter and the other opposite quarter, copied it to the other side, so his head stops growing in one direction and fills
Yeah,
out the
yeah,
other part of the
yeah,
helmet.
yeah,
But
yeah.
we're really happy with the results, to be honest. But we might
Oh,
as well leave it
amazing,
on
I'm
for
glad.
another few months. Hey,
Amazing.
right, you need to get off,
funny.
guys. I'm on a Zoom call, on a podcast.
What a podcast.
I'm on a pod. Bye.
Oh, that was good. I cannot believe how much of that shit comes out of it, though. Fuck me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was speaking to somebody yesterday, and they said that, oh no, it's gone in my coffee. Fuck.
Can I?
Yeah,
can I
literally,
just?
I
can
covered my
quickly
coffee
just
with
do
it.
some damage limitation before we do that. I did have consent from the mortgage.
Yeah, I knew that was racking in his brain. It's just...
I'm not illegal. I'm not
We'll
illegal.
put a subtitle box up. Jack did have consent for this.
I mean, yeah, I am wearing a Trump hat, but I did follow the rules on that one. on that one.
On that one, yeah.
Anyway, we got really interrupted by.
Sorry, mate. My kid.
Yeah,
Still
Oh,
it's
mate, it's
excitement.
fine, it's fine.
yeah. Anyway,
That's it.
I've got to go.
Good
To
to see
my
our
Trump,
face. But...
I've got to go to my Trump conference, so
Nice to see you,
go and
Jack.
bandage.
Sorry, mate. What were we talking about? What were we talking about?
No, we've done our damage limitation.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
What's on the agenda today, Rye? What kind of what key
So-
questions do we have?
What business we got to
So
talk
we've
about?
Or what business?
Got quite a few questions,
Why is the
gents.
layout? Oh, there you go.
Got quite a few
Enough.
questions, and then also got a great piece of content for the viewers. So I'll bring that up on the stage. So I came across this on YouTube the other day. I've never heard of Spears Magazine before. Maybe that's my ignorance of the industry, but it seems like they host a lot of really good speakers on some of their annual conferences. And
Yeah, I
they
listened to
did,
this.
yeah, they did this talk with, these are property legends: Nick Candy, George Azar, and Peter Wetherall, running huge companies. You just go watch the video; it's well worth watching. But these are big developers with a lot of experience in the industry, and it's just interesting to hear their perspective on the time in the market, where we are today, their sort of strategies and what they're working on. Nick Candy's famous for the One Hyde Park building. It's just a really good listen. So just anyone out there, if you want to go,
It is predominantly based on Nick Candy selling his new Dubai residency, though. That is the key, I think, of the pitch. But it's still really good to listen to.
Yeah, these guys are there to sell themselves as well, but they do talk about some interesting stuff going on in the market. So just a really good video. Go give it a listen. And then
What's your thoughts on Nick Candy? What's your thoughts on him? I don't know enough about him, but he seems like an absolute legend to me. I think some people say he's quite arrogant, but I would be if I was making the money he's made.
I'd imagine he's
I don't
got
think
a stroke
anybody
of
gets to that
arrogance.
level without being classed as arrogant, because arrogance can come across as arrogance, but really they may also just be like quite focused and know what they need to do, and it's just saying no to distractions. That in itself can come across as arrogant.
I quite liked
Yeah.
how candid he was, to be honest. He's quite candid.
Yeah,
Seemed to have no filter.
I'd love to have a coffee with him one day. It'd be amazing. I think he's just done so well. To be honest, he's rode the market up. He was talking about hyper. As soon as he started talking about hyperloans, Euro hyperloans,
Yeah.
I started googling what
Euro
those were.
hyperloans.
Never heard of them, but yeah,
You
it's
find
just
anything
all
out
the stuff
about
you
him?
don't know, innit? Not really. No, I couldn't really understand it. I was in between meetings,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to do a quick optimization or whatever it's called. I can't remember the word of it, but yeah, I need to do some more research. It's an unopened tab that I need to
Well, he said they don't
understand
exist
more
now,
about.
innit? But he said, yeah. So
It's
for
impossible to get that type of deal, I think.
Yeah, for anyone listening, he did a site called One Hyde Park, and he does talk a little bit about it and how it's impossible to ever do that again. It's a legendary scheme right on the edge of Hyde Park, super tall. He's got the penthouse that I think's on the market for like 180 million, but I think it's going to sell for like 300 million or something crazy. And he just explains how you just could never do that scheme again, not only because of the financial market and the available financing that there is, but also just the fact that there aren't sites like that where you can build that tall in central London. It's becoming more and more congested. And they do talk about that quite a bit in this interview, which I found interesting, how London is more, as they build more, it just gets more and more difficult to build anything else, kind of like New York, where all the streets just get restricted, more and more restricted, so that the city's just naturally pushing out. So you notice places like Wembley and the south
Or
of the
higher.
river, they're all building up. Yeah, and they're building up quick. Places like Mayfair, you just can't build up because everything's listed. These huge, beautiful, really expensive buildings. There
It's
is
just
no gap to
not the
build a
space.
skyscraper. Yeah.
Which
But
in
yeah, anyway,
Dubai, you can sort of grow up and grow out and grow up as much as you want. So you are restricted
yeah,
by the land available.
yeah. Well, George Azar is obviously based out in the Middle East, and he's built a lot in Saudi Arabia and Dubai. But he is what did he buy? What's the name of it? He bought he's got an agency. It's a big agent, really super famous agency. I can't remember the name of it. So yeah, just interesting talk. But questions, we do have some good questions today. So
Not
Jaden
Saatchi and
Marley,
Saatchi, was it? Was it Saatchi and Saatchi you bought?
Sotheby's, isn't it?
no, Sotheby's.
Sotheby's,
That's it.
Sotheby's,
Yeah,
that's it, yeah.
Sotheby's.
Do you know? Sorry, just before you move on, Nick and the Candy Brothers. Do you know they did Hyde Park, or they started Hyde Park, like the process of it when they were 30. So
Is
that's some good going, mine, isn't it?
He's married to Holly
Okay.
Valance as well, isn't he? Is he married to Holly Valance?
mad. How long did it take him then? How long was that? Do you know how long the scheme was?
Well, they started the process back then. I don't know actually when was it finished. I can't remember.
They
It was
did. They
finished-
did a lot. They did a lot of trading sites. They did a lot of using the network to shake hands on deals and back to back in it, and making a few million quid here and there.
In
They're
1995,
proper
they bought their
traders.
first property. In 1995, they bought their first property, a one-bed flat in Earls Court, using £6,000 loan from their grandmother.
So they started
Shows
the
what you can do.
process for One Hyde Park in 2004, and they finished it in 2009. Like that, obviously included procurement, investors, planning,
That's not bad.
build. 2000,
Yeah,
so 5
I mean
years.
that's back in the day when shit could actually get done, though, isn't it?
That's mad. 5 years end to end. That's nuts. That's like how long it takes you, fucking Dorian,
Yeah,
to build
but we can't build 7 houses for that at the moment. So
It's nuts.
yeah. Wales was
Take me
on
5
the
years.
news.
It can take me 5 years to clear up this confetti.
I know, it's everywhere. I'm not doing it.
Wales was on the news this morning for not hitting his housing target. I mean, that's a shock. So yeah.
Yeah, fucking hell, no one will. But yeah, questions, guys. Questions. So we've got Jaden Marley. I think I asked a question before, so thank you for your question. DM this to Jack. So, hi, Jack. Just thought I'd send you the question through the podcast on here as it's too long for the story text box. We are developer, contractors, landlords looking to improve our old systems, spreadsheets for tracking all business expenditure, non-cloud-based software, etc. What would you advise implementing? For example, we are looking at using Coho or similar for the rental management, implementing zero accounting or similar, and looking at creating individual project spreadsheets for tracking construction. Would you guys advise implementing anything else to help with managing the construction process? Any other softwares you would use? We are trying to implement better systems for tracking the finances and costs for construction projects across the businesses. Thanks. So, Jack, do you want to start with this one, mate?
Yeah, cool. So lettings and management, we use 3 bits of software. Well, technically 4. Good Lord, which does all our referencing processing. Coho, another alternative that a lot of people use is actually Arthur. And then for payments, we use PayProp that feeds into Xero. So that would be the fourth. So Good Lord, Coho, and Payprop is what we use for management lettings, HMOs, blah, blah, blah. I'll let the guys comment on construction, but I've heard that Microsoft Project is pretty good. And then for our developments, we're obviously not the main contractor. So we just use Excel spreadsheets for basically the P&L and then the cash flow costings and drawdown processing for our lender. So it sticks at Excel. We just find it so adaptable and easy to use, and everyone in the team can live jump into it. And that's what we use for developments.
Nice. D?
Yes, cool. So for from a land point of view, so the question was developer / contractor or just contractor?
Well,
Kind of all in
answer
all.
for developer and contractor.
Just taking it from the cycle. From land at the moment, we're using land stack to help find sites and keep them kind of there. In addition, combined with Excel, every software we use, unfortunately, or fortunately, depends how you look at, has like an Excel back, behind it that like complements. If that makes sense. Not everything is all done in the software. The main stuff is, but then we always do all the tweaking and changing and modeling in Excel and the tracking, just because, as Jack said, it's so flexible and so easy. But yeah, so land is land stack, and then we have something called Procore, project management, and that encompasses from pre-construction through commercial, through construction, through to post-construction, and that's meant to be like the centralized project management software where the project is at the center, and then the rest of the development cycle tracks through that, for right from technical estimating, procurement. We use a software called Procure as well now that works with Procore, and that's really for procurement. We have an accounting software, Xero, which works with Procore as well. And then we have some health and safety software like One Breadcrumb that works with Procore. So we try to feed it into one place as best we can. We have built our own software for cash flowing, which we're currently also constantly developing. And I think that's the main softwares really, off the top of my head.
Sweet. Stu?
Oh,
I mean, we've
apologies.
mentioned this on-
Programming, we use
on-
Asta Programmer. Sorry, which we import into Procore.
Nice.
We've discussed these on previous podcasts, but I mean, for our accounting software, we use ClearBooks. It was built. It was not. It's one of the contenders of the one of the bigger ones. But I've used them for sort of 16 years. Was there with the developer when he was setting it up. It used to be called Quick Quote or something. They changed it to ClearBooks, and it was built for CIS and for us to be able to manage a lot of contractors. Which was quite handy. And now, they're a pretty good, reasonable size, about 40,000 paying customers or something last time I checked. So we use that for our sort of account side of things. We use Salesforce for our customer relationship management for the residential conversions that we do. Our QS or our contracts manager is really heavy on Monday.com, so he's building up all the new Gantt charts and all the pre-construction and the during build and the asset management on Monday.com. And then we use Excel for all of our appraisals and all of our sort of project tracking, if you like, and sort of using all the data we scrape from each individual. Even though we put it on ClearBooks, which we can track projects, we then play around with man hours and and we're using this thing which was desperate to get set up, which is only a week or so away now, a product called sitedocs.co.uk, which will allow us to track time on site alongside our RAMs and all of our employers' requirements, contracts requirements. We can put it all in one place, give them a QR code, scan them in, scan them out, and just sort of document what's going on a more regular basis. And we can use that data, feed that into all of our costs and all of our invoices. Our QS has also set up some AI software where we scan all the invoices in, and it will take every line item. So rather than paying for manually entering all this stuff and then trying to use it, we're just trying to get everything scraped straight off of every bit of paper, every hour on site, and then we can really focus on becoming a focused developer contractor, because our niche really is going to be the guy who takes full control. We're almost thinking like we deliver as our strap line, because we are delivering at every point to try and make sure we make as much profit as possible. So just using all these software to try and incorporate a better price, which means we can offer the right price for right sites moving forward, or give fixed price contracts, which ultimately where we're to grow and actually make some cash in this game. We're going to have to really do that and take a bit of risk. But if we can eliminate the risk by using these bits of software, then we'll be on for a better path moving forward.
Beautiful. Nice one, mate. I'll just start mine just by, if you're in the development property space, like depending on how much of the project life cycle you're touching, you really do need a lot of fucking softwares. And it's only through doing this where I was just thinking about all the softwares we use. So I'm just going to list off a few. I probably won't even capture them all, but all the Microsoft suite, obviously, so that's Excel, PowerPoint, Word, shit like that. And then we got Monday.com, SketchUp Pro for all the designs, things like that. Monday.com's all the project management and stuff. QuickBooks, Builder Trend, Premiere Pro, and other adjacent content management stuff, and then all the scheduling for the social media content as well. Then we got all the management stuff for the management and lettings, so Alto, Bridge AI, Good Lord. And then we've got all the OTAs of Vivo and all that stuff that you need to manage. Like I could keep going on. There's so many softwares that you need. So it's quite, and there's so many varieties and different options with those softwares. So just for anyone out there listening, you're going to always hear perspectives from people and what works for them and what doesn't work for them. But there are just a lot of options, and you kind of want to scrape the market and see just what's best for you. So what we've done mainly is rely on Monday.com for all of our task management and things like that, for departments to speak to each other. You can create a lot of automations, so that's really good. Construction wise, we historically did everything through Excel, but now have Builder Trend integrated with QuickBooks. QuickBooks, the accounting software. Builder Trend is like project management software for construction. Great on smaller sites. So if you go bigger and bigger, if your sites are big, then Procore is what you want to use. But Builder Trend's great, especially if you're using subby contractors or subby trades. And then on the lettings and management side, we use Alto. So we've literally just switched over the last few months to Alto from 1090. 1090 was crap. Alto is really good, and we've now integrated Bridge AI into the back end. And Bridge AI is an absolute game changer. So what you can do with Bridge AI is you set up a WhatsApp, a business WhatsApp, and then Bridge AI then links into all of your open rent, your spare rooms, and things like that, and it can take in all the inquiries. So completely automated. The AI knows all of your offerings. It can read all your listings. It speaks to the tenants, books in viewings with them by linking into your calendar, qualifies the tenants, sends the application forms, and then directs them to a Good Lord link to reference them and get the application all finalized with no human intervention whatsoever. So this new software, Bridge AI, integrated into Alto, makes for like a much more scalable lettings business where you don't have girls on the phone all the time dealing with time wasters and then being able to get back to people quicker. So that's what we do there on the management side. But I'd say Monday.com, if you're not using that, it is really beneficial for developments.
So how
Anyway,
automated is your lettings arm, Rye? Because you must be costing a fortune on your monthlies of all those bits of software.
I mean, Alto's pretty cheap. It's like any sort of standard. Be probably the same as Coho or 1090. I think it's like a few £100 a month or something. And then I think there is a charge for like when you hit a certain number of properties or a certain number of tenants. And it's the same with Bridge AI, but Bridge AI is like £200 for up to 700 applicants a month. So really cheap, like compared to the amount of heavy lifting it can do. Because with lettings, you have girls just on the phone all the time to inquiries about the, oh yeah, no, that's not a house, it's a room. So yeah, you can't rent the, so all right, bye. Oh yeah, hello. But there's so much of that. This AI just
Oh,
does
Ryan,
all of it.
how do people pick up the phones in letting agencies?
Hello, how are you? Can I help? Yeah, obviously there's still going to be manual calls coming in from advertiser boards and things like that, but it's mainly a lot of our traffic comes through Spare Room. So people inquiring through Spare Room, and that takes time for someone to get round to all those messages, whereas the AI could do it all instantly, quickly capture someone. Then it gives you speed to respond to inquiries, which is a competitive advantage, but also can fully reference them, take them through the Good Lord stuff, book in all the viewings and everything else, sync it with the calendar, like an absolute game changer. So we've implemented all of that, and I'll update you guys on how it goes over the next few months. I'm sure there'll be some bottlenecks that will prop up, but yeah, that's it for me on softwares. But there's a lot of fucking softwares out there that you'll need. Next question. Next question is from Empire Homes Group. Thank you for your question. They've said, hi, mate, just wondering what exit strategy would you advise for developments and why? That's a very kind of vague question. It completely depends on a few things. So subject to interpretation. Jack, do you want to start with this one and just you answer it how you'd answer it?
Yeah, I mean, The biggest top tip is multiple to sort of protect downside, multiple exits. So, I've been part of multiple panels over multiple years, and one thing that's always really urgent to be talking about is having multiple exits. We do a mixture of in our development company, that is, we do a mixture of holding, so refinancing and renting out, which is, in my opinion, one of the lower risk exit strategies, because for someone it's more affordable to rent, and there's a huge demand for people to rent that can't afford to buy. What you have to be really careful of, especially for us, not necessarily for maybe Dorian or Ryan in lower capital value areas, is sometimes your rental income doesn't cover the stress test, which is normally 120% of the mortgage. So if you're in a high value area, for an example, we've got a project in North London. Our costs are 80% of gross development value. Our rent in that particular area, because it's £1,000 a square foot, doesn't cover a refinance mortgage. So we'd have to put money in just to refinance it to get a mortgage. So on high value capital areas, you are potentially running a little bit more risk of not going down the private sales route and just trying to exit as best you can. We sort of go in sort of waves, really. I believe that we've probably held too much stock to date. My recommendation would be sell as much as you can in the first 5 years. Then you've got good cash flow and repeat cash flow coming into your business and your pipeline, and then take your business forward to potentially consider holding more. We kind of did it the other way. We'd liked holding, and it's made us feel a few pinch points over the years.
Yeah, but Jack, are you benefiting from that? Because you've held them, refinancing 2 5-year deals, and you're not repulling any out.
Yeah, in the long run, you on a refinance, you might pull out, some cash, but then you're for five years is a long time as an SME, growing SME development company. Like our block of 14 flats, which is worth £3.5 million, is making 32 grand net, but there's 1.2 million pounds worth of equity in it. So that we could make that 1.2 work really well over 5 years. Our average IRR is about 40%. So if you do the maths on 1.2 over 5 years in the business and helping the cash flow and pushing other projects forward and bringing new opportunities in the reason I say first 5 years is because that's the inertia period when you need cash. You need cash to grow. You need cash to get to the size that you want to get to. But we held too much, and that's done in the past now. So we've our balance sheet looks great, but our cash flow has been difficult. We've managed. Every business owner has to deal with problems and create solutions, and that should be 90% of your role, which we've done. But now we're actually selling a bunch because we're sort of fed up with being so close to the wire and not having much of a buffer, and also not actually living off the fruits of the labour. Because when it's stuck in an asset, there's not a lot you can do with it other than just look at the balance sheet, smile to yourself, and then wonder why you feel like Oliver Twist going asking for some more porridge. So we're selling a bunch at the moment. We've actually, out of the £42 million worth of stock we're delivering today, we're selling about £35 million worth of that to sort of combat that last.
I'd really question the timing on that, just as a thought, because we are right at the bottom of this buying cycle, and if you sell over the next 6 months, you're going to have so much of a better chance of selling at a premium summer next year onwards. I mean, look, the one in Farnham, we are potentially going to delay the refinance just to bring us into a better position, because if they do lower rates quite quick, which everyone's saying, then you do win on both ends, because the yield will come down, and then the investment into these blocks of investment properties will be so much more attractive to your investor, which will create a competitive market, which will then increase the value, because people will be willing to pay 5.5%, 6% for some of the stock. At the moment, they want to be paying 7.5%, 8%, because they need that extra risk on top of 5% bank money.
I mean,
I think it can take longer.
Delaying it for 10 months.
We're not in the timing game. That's not our game. We're in the development game. I actually completely disagree. So for us to refinance one of our sites, let's assume we're paying a 2% arrangement fee and a 5% ERC in year 1, 4% in year 2, which means that we have to take a haircut on that site of 10%. A minimum of 6% to exit it. If you're going to tell me the market's going to go up 6% from our sales value in the next 12 months,
you're going to sell them as they come out of products. You're going to sell them as they come out of products. You're not going to leave and do early repayment.
Yeah. So, I mean, even 2-year products are still like 3, 4, 5% arrangement fees at the moment.
Yeah, but you're already in products with ones you've held already. you're not going to start selling them earlier.
Yeah,
Come
no,
out
no.
of it.
Everything that we've kept, we're keeping. Everything we're developing, we're selling.
Oh, apologies.
We'll
I
be
thought you were talking
selling
about
them
the stuff
on.
you've
Yeah,
already held.
no. That's that they're already fixed and done and cash flowing, and they're collecting
I
dust
did
now.
think you was talking about selling existing stock as
No,
well.
no,
Guys.
sorry.
Yeah.
That was probably that was my bad explanation. But yeah, we're gonna
New
aim to
stuff.
sell most. Yeah, so everything in delivery, the stock that we've got in delivery.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, fair. And what about
Sweet.
you, D? So just to refresh on the
So,
question.
well, I mean, it's probably obvious for me, but at the moment in my stage and what we're doing, even though we've been slapped about a bit, my favoured exit strategy is just being forward sold, ideally forward sold and forward funded. Um, you know, for me, out of the whole development process, the exit is always the one that I struggle to like mentally deal with and sleep with, because of what kind of Jack has said. Starting a development company, bootstrapped, not backed, not having like significant wealth yourself, and buffers and stuff like that, and having experienced having everything on the line and then having delays, you realize how vulnerable actually the sector is, and how easy it is, even through no fault of your own really, and that like it could just be a market blip where you can't sell, but then you end up going into default and blah, blah. And then you're having to take big haircuts and crystallizing losses, and then no way to repay those losses. You can just map it out and see actually it could be catastrophic. And it is for a lot of people as well, because there is a lot of people who fail in development all the time, and it's pretty much because of what we just said there, as well as them making poor decisions. So for me at the moment, it has its negatives as well. But whatever we do, we always look for a buyer in advance before we fully commit. So everything we do is forward sold, exits in place. We try to back as many deals as we can, and then if we are going to deliver anything out, we want to be funded so we get paid before we have to pay, kind of the supply chain, so to speak. And then it can be a very cash flow positive model. Hasn't been in recent years because of inflation, but when inflation's settled, which pretty much did tail end of last year in construction, we can see it in our site. It is a cash flow positive model. It does work well. Vistry have just released their half year results. They're a bit different because they're a public backed PLC, but still, they specialize in the partnerships model, which is forward sold, forward funded, blah blah blah. On their turnover of half year, 2 billion revenue for half year, they're pumping out a very good return on capital employed for that level of, in the traditional house builder market. So yeah, that's, without rambling on, that's what I would recommend.
Beautiful. Stu?
Yeah, I'll just write a few things down. I mean, obviously, it does depend on a load of things. I mean, one thing would be what strategy you ultimately want to play in property development. If you want to buy and sell, you're effectively trading property and making money on the upside. Depends on the location where you are in the country. It depends on why you're actually buying it. What's the real purpose? The what ifs. So you need multiple exits, as Jack said. You need to make sure you can get out in different circumstances. If the market changes, if you overspend, and the last one is the investor's needs. So I've just set up a deal with a new investor where they want to just park £500,000 into a new company that we can use effectively as a cash buyer, and then they will top at a short-term loan on a coupon to up to £500,000 to do the development works. So it means we can just get in, get out, and we'll run that as a bit of a sideline hustle. But the rules on that is he wants to be in for a minimum of 5 years and wants to sell his shares in 10 years. So I already know that now, so we can strategize and run that alongside what other strategies we've got, because there is different levels of complexities in development. The HMOs and the model which I actually advocate and think that everyone should be doing HMOs because it's the biggest risk reward in terms of the development costs and cash flow. And then moving up to more of the complicated commercial to resi schemes, which do come with all the stuff we mentioned at the start with, listed building consent and green belt, flood zones, loads of other stuff you need to consider. And I think work up to that, because that is really where that's the golden goose that everyone wants to sort of, everyone wants to do these big complex, and I don't know why, but it's a sense of accomplishment, I guess, doing this bigger stuff. And with the bigger stuff comes with bigger rewards, but they're the ones that ultimately I think that we'll be looking to sell on. And if we can do a bit of Dorian strategy with the forward selling, registered social landlords, speak to, operators that want to buy these things, we never buy it, because if we have to give a 15% discount, the cost of cash could be up to 12-13%. So we might as well give the discount up front and get them to pay for us to do the work. So those ones we're going into with an eye of wanting to sell, but then use the cash we make from them to buy and hold, because the real value in property development, I think, is holding. It's the money hack. Against inflation, these things go up over time, and you don't have to do anything. It costs very little energy, in terms of reward later on, just through the debt cycle. So I think having a blend of all things, but ultimately build a strategy that works for you. And if you've got another cash flowing position, like another job, a high, well-paid job, or other side hustles that create you your monthly cash to live on, then if you don't have to rely on buying and selling property to live, then I would hold it, because that's where you benefit from compounding your investment and your time. So yeah, there's loads of bits in that question, but that gives you a few bits.
Yeah, no, nice one, guys. I mean, I won't repeat everything you said, because we're pretty much the same thing, just that we focus on retention. So our goal is to retain everything we can. And in the Northeast, you can do that easier because it's cheaper.
I mean, interesting question. Could you do sales? Would it work?
Tricky. No, tricky. It's always tricky up here doing sales. There's obviously pockets, and that's just talking about yesterday with Kane, because we want to look at doing some flips, but actually more for a marketing gimmick than for making money. Now, we will make money doing it, but I want to take some nice houses in Gosforth, so central Newcastle, where you can buy stuff for like 300-400 distressed assets, and they can be worth 700-800 if you do them up nicely. Central Newcastle, big populace, big buyers market, really good postcodes. Stuff like that I'd probably look at, but I'd look at it from both at commercially, as we could film that sort of process and make really good marketing material out of it to sell our services, but also flip and turn some money around. So those locations, yes, but generally the Northeast. So the kind of towns you guys work in the South, those sort of similar towns up here, they just don't work for flips really, unless you're buying, like you can and maybe make 10-20 grand, but that just isn't worth the time. We're much better off doing HMOs, and you make 10-20 grand just on a year's worth of rent roll. So there just isn't that uplift in value here.
The one thing that I always struggle with buying up north is that when you take your cash flow, which is good cash flow, once you have to lock more money in, because the asset is not as worth as much, but it's going to cash flow a better yield.
Yeah.
But then when you deduct the cost of a new kitchen, new doors, new carpets off of your annual income, off your rent roll, what is your true profit margins on these jobs? Because if you're gonna have something for 10 years, the chances of you putting a new kitchen in, redoing the bathroom, redoing the kitchen, that's going to probably cost another 25 grand or something, or maintenance for the roof, or the boiler goes and stuff. So when you deduct all those costs from your true rent roll, what is your true profit margin? And do you allocate sort of 30% a year into a separate pot, or do your investors, do you sort of suggest they do that so they don't use the whole 100% of their income? Because again, what we benefit from in the South is that the inflation, capital appreciation goes up, which helps with a load of those things, because you can refinance it against the income, against the rising rates, and you can use some of that cash to sort of maintain the building. Where if you don't get an awful lot of that up in the north, then it's just difficult to recycle all your money, I think. Well, to live on all the income it produces, because it might be smoke and mirrors with a better yield, because you've actually got to allow for some of that yield to maintain the property, and that's what I just struggle with.
There's a few ways to look at it, but I mean, ultimately, once we finish the refurb, we make sure we gear these assets for low maintenance. So if there are maintenance issues down the road, they're trivial costs. Most of the stuff now we fix into the property, so we don't have to replace as much furniture. But yeah, maybe you have to change a bed, maybe every 5 to 7 years. But they're trivial costs. So I wouldn't say there's anything drastic that's going to kill that cash flow. If you're making 15 to 20 grand net a year in rental income, and you still have the capital appreciation up here. Yes, it's at a slightly lower rate historically, but bear in mind our hedge on the Northeast is because it is at the moment the opportunity in the UK where it's low now, but with all the infrastructure, there's just billions going into every corner of the Northeast. The house prices are going to fucking fly, and that's why the highest rental appreciation in the UK in the last 12 months was the Northeast. It was 11% compared to London's 7%. Yeah, so we are hedging against a macro market change for the Northeast. That's why we're excited to be here, because we know that we can buy stuff now for 100 grand, and we'll look back on it in 10 years' time and go, oh, do you remember when you could buy it for 100? Now it's all 200, 300, which is the same story in the South. So I don't think that'd be an issue. You can refinance and get the uplift still, but you're absolutely right on the the flipping side, our exit strategies are more limiting. You can always sell an investment yield, and that's fine. But if you're selling to the open market, it is harder here to make that margin unless you're in those key pockets and locations, which stresses another important point to the person who asked the question. Anyone listening, you've got to know your macro and micro markets, like for your exit strategies. It's no good just being in a town knowing it's a good town, I can flip this. Well, actually, you're on the right street. Like, are you, is that the right postcode? Are you near that right school where families with kids will desperately pay extra for that house because they want to be near that school? And there's a lot to think about when it comes to exits. So yeah, but
The
we gear towards retention.
just looked at the Vistry half year update, and anyone interested in development, I recommend that you do follow the house builders and just read some of their reports as well, because the presentations are easier to read. They're smaller, and they just hit straight to the point. They did an analysis between the government and Knight Frank of the market and the value of the market to calculate their market share. So this is for social affordable PRS, the partnership, and an open market, and this is for sales. So this ignores rental and it ignores commercial. So they say that the market today, the partnership model, which is 106 social affordable PRS, excluding commercial, is 80,000 units per annum in England, and 17.6 billion in value annually. And then the open market opportunity is 155,000 and 46 billion value. So combined value in terms of the development sector between partnerships and house building is whatever that is, 63.6 billion. So it's a decent size to make a a sizable business, depending on anyone's ambition levels. Really, I think if anybody wants to build a 10 million plus business, you can see that in terms of opportunity, it's not even a scratch on the surface. Do you know what I mean? So it's and that ignores rental and it ignores commercial, which is also a big sector in both partnerships and open market and rental. So yeah, it's quite exciting when you look at the macroeconomics, like you say, Ryan.
and it's also a becoming more and more of a less competitive landscape in a way, because it's getting harder and harder with regulation and planning permission and cost of capital.
Oh
You
yeah,
have to get more and more creative, which is great because it weans out the weak from the chaff. So if you're a good operator, and mostly if you're just determined and resilient and you can last out, and you've lasted out
and
the last few
patient.
years.
So we
And
just had a
patient,
decision notice come through on a site now. 2.5 years it took. 2.5 years for 26 units through the planning system, and we've got the decision notice now. So now we can start a condition. We have to wait for the judicial review period, but condition discharge. We still don't have SAB approval, which is surface water basically, and we need to get consent from NRW, Natural Resources Wales, for BAT licensing. So we've and then we
Another
also
6 months on that then.
we also need to submit a Section 80 now for demolition, which is not planning, that's building control. And then we also need to submit a Section 278 for the highways, which is not planning, not building control, but highways. So it's just,
fucking
it's
ball. You've got to be
nuts.
resilient.
It's
The
nuts.
only way,
If you lay out the system, it is fucking nuts.
yeah,
But
only way
yeah,
in this game, you need resilience, but there's a huge market share to be had. So, yeah, hopefully that helps answer your question, Empire Homes Group. Next question from Carib FC. Question: I've got 100k to start my property journey. I've set a limited company up, ready to go. Where should I begin? BRRR, which is buy, rent, refurbish, refinance, buy to let, or HMOs, or flips. I am thinking a combination of all three eventually, depending what deals I see offered to me. I don't know enough to source my own deals and spend a lot of time on my other business. Well, look no further than Beaumont Partners. But yeah, it looks like you need, you either need the time to get into it. We'll go around and ask questions, but it looks like if you're running a full-time business, then you either need the time to be able to allocate this money and do the right DD, or you need a partner, the joint venture partner, or someone who can do the service for you. So let's go around the room. Jack, how would you answer this for this fella?
Yeah, I mean, he said to start my property journey. So sort of reading between the lines, maybe he wants to eventually be in property more than maybe the current business, or equally. I think no time to start is better than now. I would recommend splitting that cash pot, going in with someone else that might be a little bit more gifted with the technicalities of a project, or even the construction of a project, and do one flip and one buy to let together collectively. So you split that pot. I would also invest some of that pot into self learning to input, because realistically, whatever course it is, a 10 grand course might end up saving you 100 grand. And I think that surrounding yourself with the right people is really valuable. We actually did an episode, can't remember the exact number, we'll put it in the show notes, but where we talked through, I think it was like 15k, 50k, 100k for an example. Stuart just said, go raise £500,000, but the principle of our answers on that are probably very sort of alike and akin to this answer. And then once you've got a flip and a buy to let under your belt, you kind of got one of both pots, a bit of a mini development and a bit of a mini portfolio building type product, and just sort of see what fits for you and your goals. And you're learning how to raise capital, work with banks, find the asset, do DD on the asset, work through planning, work through construction, work through sales, work through a refinance. You'll be a very much more well-rounded property person at the end of those two projects. And obviously they're fairly small, so you're probably not compromising a lot of risk with your capital, and then sort of work out a business plan from there is where I'd sort of fit that model in.
Nice. D?
Yeah, so I'm gonna lean on hers. I can't remember who asked actually the last sentence, which is spend a lot of time with my other business. So the answer really depends on that information, i.e. the information of that business. Is that business successful? Is it throwing off more capital? Like, how much time do you actually have? If they've got a well cash flowing trading business that's throwing off excess cash flow on a monthly basis, then it does dictate what you kind of can do with your strategy, if that makes sense. It is always better to understand why you're trying to do it for. If they want to experience 3 deals because they're not concerned about cash flow or capital, they just want to get the experience, that is a different mindset versus I need to replace X income because I'm closing my business because it doesn't work. Do you know what I mean? So that is very, very different. So assuming they can get that sorted out, what I would actually say, similar to Jack anyway, I would definitely split the pot. Maybe I would split the plot in 3 ways. I would allocate some money towards courses to build the knowledge, because in that sentence, well, it says he doesn't have enough knowledge. That is not good enough. I wouldn't. You cannot go into this sector regardless, just saying I don't have enough knowledge. You have to learn. That's just a, if you're flat out with your business, get up earlier or work later or work the weekends. If you're going to pump 6 figures into a sector, do not do that without learning more information, regardless of what it is. Even if you work with other people, keep building knowledge in it. It's just not acceptable to say I don't have the time. So allocate some money towards training, whether they're courses. I've got no problem with courses at all, as long as you have a clear explanation of why you're doing them for. I would also split some money off and allocate it towards some type of mentor / coach / accountability group, whatever it is. So 10 grand for courses, 10 grand for that mentor or coaching or groups, so you're constantly getting some practical advice and help on exact situations as they come up. Then I would take the rest of the money, and because you're time constrained, and again, I don't know the information of the business, I would then try and actually work with a sourcer, kind of like Beaumont, that does it all. And they would find the site. They would help you through the finance process. They will help project manager and even potentially manage on the back end. And I would try and work with a sourcer that's reputable, got good references that you get from networking. And I would work with them on the one strategy at a time. And if it goes well, do the next one. If it goes well, do the other one. And by the time you've done all 3, you should have enough knowledge to know exactly where you want to go.
Nice. Comprehensive. Go on, Stu.
I was going to say, keep it short, exactly what Dorian said. I think I would work with a 5-year goal. So if you're enjoying your business and it's cash flowing and providing you a salary and a lifestyle you're happy with, and you want to park the 100 grand, or you want to park 30% of it and you want to start building a portfolio, it depends on where you're buying around the country. If you're buying in the south, you're buying a flat, taking a 1-bed to a 2-bed, or doing something a bit smaller, and just it will give you a taste of working with trades and the process and buying and selling, working with solicitors. If you're in the north, you're buying a 5-bedroom house that you're turning into an 8-bedroom HMO, and using Beaumont and Partners will get you that, and you can earn and learn. And if you're passionate about learning, and training courses, finding a decent trainer or someone who a bit of a mentor who you can sort of follow in their footsteps, learn from their lessons, will be the quick way of getting yourself up to speed. But there is no quick way in property. It's do you want to look at 5 years out in advance, see what you want from property? Is it an income, stable income that you can enjoy life on? Is it where you want to make that, you want to 10x that 100 grand to £1,000,000, and then you need to do a bit more buying and selling? And go from there, really. But yeah, definitely keep learning.
Yeah, nice. I've got nothing to add to that. I think everyone's answered that very nicely. Definitely learn. And then Sophia's asked, so she asked this question, yeah, and I'm going to slightly reframe it. So she said, I've got a question that will show how much I love what you do. If you could change one part of the process of property business, what would you guys do a lot? What is it that you do a
All
lot
together, 1,
that
2,
causes you
3,
distress?
planning.
Planning.
Absolutely.
So I mean, if we had to change one part of to reframe this question, if we had to change one part of the process about property development without saying planning, because obviously planning is just the main thing. What is there another part of the process where you just think, if we didn't have to do that thing, then this would be a lot easier? Is
So
there anything
I
else you can
have
think of?
I have one. This is more relevant to my business, or if anybody, industry, or if anybody wants to go into partnerships where to be forward sold and forward funded, you typically, not always, but typically, and have to enter into some form of like contract, and most of the time they're fixed price contracts. The biggest thing I would love to see change, and really would remove one of the final big risks, it could still wipe out a business like mine in the sector, is the procurement structure, the fluctuation provisions, can coming away from complete fixed pricing on brown, especially complex brownfield sites, and being more collaborative and sharing the risk, and getting inflation assistance if it goes over a certain level, which just didn't happen really. So that would be the biggest thing I think would. That would also unlock a lot of funding for this sector as well, I believe, because all the funders think that bit's just even though a lot of the risks have been mitigated, that last risk gets honed in on, because it's one of the only risks remaining, and just becomes too much of a risk really to unlock decent funding.
Yeah, nice. Stuart, Jack, got anything to add to that one? Any part of the process?
I just can't get planning out of my head. I'm trying to think of anything else that would cause me
Yeah.
less pain, and
I've
planning
got
is just
I've
the
got one.
be all and end all of everything.
I've got
Go on
one.
then, Jack.
Banks are kind of like, I feel like banks are like an arranged marriage that you don't want. You need them, but they're a fucking ball ache to deal with. The bank underwriter is scared of their own shadow. They're trying to find every single reason to not do the deal, and all you want to do is do the deal. And time again, we've had issue over issue, and every time I speak to a new lender, I go, I'm not rate driven, I'm process driven. And having an underwriter that works at the bank that's pragmatic, understands that, takes a, educated view on things, goes, actually, you know what, I can see that, I get that, I understand that, is invaluable. And I always believe the most difficult person to get a deal over the underwriter is kind of like the security for everyone. For you, if an underwriter likes a deal, you're probably going to be all right, unless your gearing's changed and you're putting in more of the hurt cap. So yeah, to have a smoother process with that. If we didn't have to go to bank lenders, and the planning process was that couldn't be touched, we would be doing a lot more efficiently, more effectively, and taking on doing things a lot easier and with a lot more simplified. Prime example, we've got three sites actually. When we buy a site, we always take it through value add processing. So that's redesign, redevelopment of the scheme, and making sure that we're squeezing the asset as best we can. Sometimes we don't know exactly what that looks like once we've bought the sites. We might have a planning application for A, but we want to do B, and that might be 20% extra value. That might be 20% less cost of redesign. So that's our game. Improve the gross development value, reduce the cost once we've bought a site. 3 sites, 2 of them we've increased significantly. I'm talking like literally millions of pounds worth of value. And it's why is it so difficult to go back to the same lender and go, we need more capital because we've added £1 million. We need 300 grand to unlock another £1 million. Why is that conversation difficult? They just oh, you need new facility. Well, if I need a new facility, I might as well fuck you out of the picture and get someone new in, because you're not being pragmatic about this. That's one qualm. And then another one is it's only a small site that we're holding, which is 4 flats, and we've got planning for a 5th flat, and the lenders basically handed us over to the collections team. They've gone, oh, you're not you're not quick enough with your delivering your 4 units. We're like, oh, forget the 4 units for a second. We've added 300 grand's worth of value, and we don't need any more money from you. And they've gone, I'll
All
deal
over.
with the collections team. Fucking brilliant. I tell you what, put me in contact. Yeah, let's speak to the guys that are going to call in the loan, shall we? That sounds like a good idea. So, I mean, that lack of pragmatism is to some degree the bane of my life. And I know that Dorian doesn't have to deal with that, but it is, underwriters are difficult people.
I mean,
I've
it's
got,
that painful. That just quickly on that point, that the banks are that painful that I'd rather give away 50% of a new business venture just to deal with cash. So if an investor's got £500,000 with £500,000 capex to sort of use to do these developments, I'd rather work and do twice as many than have to deal with it, because it just slows the whole process down, and the amount of mental energy you need to get through those hurdles that are constantly in your way. I'd rather just do twice as much and just not have the issue. So they are hard to find. People, not everyone's got £1 million in cash, but the more you start doing about it and talking about it, the more people you get introduced, and more social media posts I get, or messages saying got some money, interested. And it's just, I'd much rather work with in cash than with the banks. But yeah, good one, Jack.
Yeah, I've got two clear ones, and I think this might stir up some. Oh, what's happening there?
Hello.
Oh, was
Sorry,
that me? Was that you? Oh,
Wow.
right.
Wanted a
I
bit
thought
of
the whole
spotlight.
thing glitched.
I'm laughing because that was a complete accidental click, but it bigged up me. I accidentally clicked just me.
Yeah, I've got two, and I think this might stir up some conversation. So one, the valuation process. I feel like I don't understand. There's so much data out there from the VAS panels, and there's just so much data on values. Why is it still so subjective? And we can go to one valuer and it be 100. Literally, we had this the other day. It was 100 grand difference between one valuer and another valuer, and there's another grand. And every time I get a valuer, their justification for not changing when you challenge it is our PI. We're too scared about our PI, and I'm like, well, fuck your PI. You're basically stealing money from us for your service. Why is there no integrity in your quality of service? Because then I have another valuer come in and go, yeah, completely agree with your values, completely makes sense. You're getting this much income. Of course, an investor would buy it on that sort of yield basis. Underwriter agrees, blah, blah, blah. So why does this valuer still in business? And this valuer, I'm not going to name and shame because I do think it's a bit harsh, but this valuer is known for giving shit valuations. And I just think it's far too subjective. The valuation process could be so much more efficient and standardized. But I don't know if anyone's got anything to add to that. But I do think.
Well, I've got one now. It's
valuations are
a very small, just a small property that came as part of a site we bought that got valued on like a refinance. One valued at 75,000. Someone else valued it at 105,000. Now evaluations just come back in yesterday at 120,000. Thinking this is just wild. It's just
Is that agents' valuations?
no, this is mortgage valuation.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the only thing I'd add to that is the VAS panel is a sort of a safety net for the banks, which is a bit of a pain in the arse. So if you wanted to try and get around that, I'd be looking at sites that are more mixed use or more commercial basis. And the more you build up, when you start on this journey, you have to use a VAS panel lender, and you have to, and you're getting a bricks and mortar valuation, even though you built a HMO, but you have to prove the concept and prove that you know what you're doing to run a business. So a new business is difficult. So you have to do the first few on a bricks and mortar basis. Then you get a bit of a hybrid mortgage, opens up doors to different lenders who will look at you and treat you more like a landlord business. And then after a while, you can start getting a bit more creative with the ones you want to develop. So I actually love going straight from commercial straight to HMO, because you can, and then if it's got mixed use or like a 2-3 bed flat and a 6-bed HMO, or you're buying two properties side by side, you can start going out to almost like part bridging lenders or commercial lenders, where you will pay more of a premium, which at the moment is like 8.5% for a commercial mortgage. But if you're doing a high value cash flowing asset, you're almost worth paying a slightly higher interest rate to pull out all of your money or most of your money or even extra money. And then as the interest rates go down, that model is going to become quite attractive, because if you can get a commercial mortgage at 6.5%, and we're doing our numbers at 6.5%, we're pulling out everything, we're getting a high cash flowing asset, and we can just continue forever, which is the plan I run. But yeah, VAS, I try and avoid VAS lenders because that is where they are. I've got all this restriction around their PI that restricts them from giving any sort of creative options. And until you sell it on the open market, no one knows what it's worth. It's only worth what someone's willing to pay. but a commercial lender will look at it from a more of an income producing asset, and you'll get better
And
terms.
it's what one of the big fuck-ons is with HMOs, because they always go, there's not enough sold comparable data for HMOs in the area. And I'm like, yeah, that's because the good HMOs don't sell. People don't want to sell them. They keep them. So there's far less churn in the market.
And focus on one area, because you can use all the data of the previous valuations. If we always buy where we've got like 4 or 5 in that area, so I can pull up in that meeting and go, oh, this value has said this value has said this, and this. This is your yields. There's your work. And if they've got someone else they can compare against, it almost like layers up on the risk profile. So like, well, I've gone off of data that 4 other people have said, so it's hard to get the wheels spinning. But then once you've got 3 or 4, you throw them on the desk, forget the presentation and the comparables. Here's actual facts of the last 2 years of the ones we've done. This is, I've done all your work for you, mate. It takes you 5 minutes. Can I have the valuation? This is what I think it's worth. I've done my numbers on previous ones I own. So building that part, it does get easier over time. You just got to start.
I've got quite a funny story where I fell out with the valuer big time.
Do you headbutt him?
And basically, we're buying a house below what it was potentially worth, and it was basically a shithole. The people that were previously in it were hoarders. They didn't want to put it on the open market, so we snuck in there, bought it, but they could walk away. They could just lock the front door, give the key to the agent, and walk away. And as a result of that, 22 skips later, we had to clear the whole house. But anyway, so we're buying at a discounted value. I'd agreed with the lender, which is a boutique lender, so I had a good relationship with them, that they were lending on its value, not its purchase price, because I believed its purchase price was lower than its value. The way that you normally have to go about that is you as a developer or investor have to keep the purchase price quiet, and the bank has to keep the purchase price quiet, and the valuer has got to go and do a raw valuation without knowing actually what the transaction value is at, so that they give an honest valuation. So stupidly, I wasn't able to make it, and the estate agent let the valuer into the property. The valuer's gone around the whole property, and of course, being a lazy little so-and-so, they ask, what is the purchase price? The agent was like 20-year-old girl, didn't even have a fucking clue what the purchase price was. And we were buying another property through the same agent at the same time for £330,000. So she said £330,000. But it was actually for a completely different property. The truth behind it, we believe the property was worth 400, and we were buying at 310. So if we could leverage against 400k, we could probably borrow near 300k, and we wouldn't be putting a lot into the deal. It was a flip, so we're trying to improve our return on cash. And anyway, the valuer goes away, does all his bits and bobs. Guess what the fucking valuation comes in at? 330 on the nose. So I got straight on the phone with him, and I just felt like I'd been done. I feel like that's a waste of money to me. All of that 850 quid plus VAT or whatever it was just for this house valuation is a waste of money from someone's complete laziness and trying to find out the exact purchase price to put that in, because it makes their life easier. It protects their downside against their PI cover. But the fundamentals are the information he was given was on a different house. So anyway, I've called him up on his office. His secretary picks up, and I say, can I speak to we won't call him his real name,
Steve.
Can I speak to Steve? Went through to him, and I've gone, it's Jack regarding this property, and he went, oh yeah, I've issued the valuation. I went, yeah, and I'm not very happy with it. And he was like, why is that? And I was like, well, the funny thing is, the agent called me after she had spoken with you to apologise that she had given you the wrong house valuation. It was actually a completely different house. And he went, oh right. Oh, and I went, coincidentally, the exact valuation that you've given is the exact value that she said she told you for a completely different house. We need a new valuation because we're buying it for way more than that. And he then called he went, oh, okay, all right, sorry about that. Leave it with me. Let me see what I can do. So I've played it up that the purchase price is actually higher, but actually it's lower, and blah, 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 blah. And anyway, he called the bank and told the bank that there's been an issue with the valuation and he needs to know the purchase price. The bank told him the purchase price because he was receiving from it. He then called me back and said that I was a liar. And I went, Steve, I went, there's not a complete coincidence that you've just been lazy and valued it on, and as soon as I said lazy, he flipped.
Yeah, you lost it.
He said, you know what, Jack, I'm never ever working with you again, never ever doing anything, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I ranted on, blah, 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 blah. Now, we ended up having to put more money in that deal because I didn't want to get another valuation done. We managed to get them up to 375, which was enough for us to get the deal over the line, and sort of we sort of made up, and now we're
Best mates.
amicably speaking. Coincidentally, he's lost his Rick's chartership, which is
Really?
so all in the long run.
Steve.
Yeah, but anyway, we had a big blowout. As soon as I said you've been lazy and just asked it, and King got that valuation. Game over.
Yeah, it's not going to work nicely. Well, that's I mean, I think
How
there's
to Win Friends and Influence People by Jack Jiggens.
You lazy cunt. But yeah, so valuations, genuinely, there needs to be something done, because I feel the same thing, mate. I feel like I'm wasting money on a lot of valuations, and you just know you're not getting the service that you're paying for. You're basically getting stolen from. So yeah, don't like that. The other one I'd say, and this is slightly more contentious, and we need to allow for nuance, but personal guarantees. I just think historically, personal guarantees weren't really a thing. They've become a thing where banks have now taken this overarching authority to just wrap people up personally, even though they're already getting first charge security and sometimes debentures on the asset. So I think it's nuanced. So in a business, if your business isn't got like 10 years trading history and it's not bulletproof, then fair enough. If you're asking for working capital, there's a lot of risk on there from the bank. You should have some skin in the game with some personal guarantees. I kind of get that, unless they're getting charges against assets within the business. I just don't think they should get charges on assets and also personal guarantees to the hilt. Development finance, I think there should be it's fair that there's an element of personal guarantees, because you could always be untoward or do whatever with the money. So I do think there's an element of personal guarantees. They should always be restricted. 100%, I think, is harsh when they're also getting the first charge, and you've also got equity in the game as well. But on a back end refi, when this asset's done and it's finished, and they've got a first charge on that asset, I don't understand why you also need to sign personal guarantees. Like, it's the banks why can the banks cover their ass completely, charge us interest rates through the hilt, hold us to ransom when market dynamics change, and hold us personally and our homes and our lives, and hold us with a noose around our neck? At the end of the day, they're a commercial entity that is trying to make money. They should have some skin and risk in the game as well. And I think regulators should make it a mandate that you cannot give personal guarantees, that you cannot ask for personal guarantees in certain circumstances, because historically you didn't have to. It's become like an easy, loose thing that banks do. So my big one would be personal guarantees as well. I do think it's kind of ridiculous.
The PG. So there never used to be PG on debt, on exit debt for developers. Like they are. But the problem is with land banks is once one firm's doing it, they all start doing it, and then it's just the norm, and that's unfortunately where we're at.
Would you pay more? Would you pay more in the interest? Would you pay an extra 25 basis points to not have a PG?
So I'm not massively bothered about the PGs for the exit debt, because for them to use that, you've really fucked up. You've got a void for years, and you're struggling to pay the mortgage, and
all the market dynamic though. The market could fuck us. The exchequer could fuck the market. The politicians.
Correct. If doomsday scenario, that is a problem. But people are still going to be renting. I just can't see the rental market falling below a mortgage. The market normally,
the rent doesn't matter if you're in negative equity, right? Like in 2008, if you fall into negative equity because of a big market shift, or the bank's mandates gets crossed and they call it in.
Yeah, I'm confident that my assets aren't in negative equity though. So
yeah, I know, but that's because of the market. Everything's stacked on debt. So if you look at a macro perspective, that's where I'm most scared, is because if there is a global shift in $900 trillion that's all stacked against debt on top of debt, and if that does collapse, it could drop down, like, it would be insane. But you could literally have house prices drop 60 to 80%. I mean, there's bigger issues than you as a personal guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, if that happens,
the whole world's fucked.
Why don't you just get personal guarantee insurance, Ryan? If you're concerned, why don't you hedge against the risk yourself by getting like PG insurance?
To be fair, I'm not that bothered. I'm not. It's less of a how much am I bothered about personal guarantees? Because at the end of the day, like, it's become a norm, a part of doing business. But there are times and places, and I'm big against regulation in a lot of areas. And I think the free market should always propagate, but there's much.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
But when it comes to PGs, I just don't understand why we as the developers take on so much risk and time and effort. We pay these banks fucking shitloads. They also get first charges, and they get to have our personal houses and all of our personal assets tied into the loans. Like, I just think it's too much. Like, why can the banks get away with absolute murder? Like, we can't do that. Yeah, they're so protected. They should have some risk in the game as well. And it probably make them better.
back to the VAS panel thing, I just found an email which I just was infuriated. So I spent $4,000 on 2 surveys on the Sex Shop Chinese, which is a site we talked about previously. And I made the mistake, which I'll never do again, of getting them in there too early. Well, not too early, but it was decorated, but we were going through the letting market. We're trying to get them full. Didn't have the EPCs back, whatever. But I thought that, I could get them in there. The values I had were accurate. So let's get them over as soon as possible. Got them over, showed them around, all verbal, blah, 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 blah. Come back with a valuation at like 9.5% yield. And I then, even though I had all the evidence, I then basically sent an email back saying, I don't agree with this at all. Here's one that's 0.2 miles away that we own, that we done like last year or the year before. Here's the EPCAs. Here's the 7.4% yield that we've had on another building. Here's, we didn't have it fully let yet, so we couldn't justify the income. And his email back, his response was, after reviewing the valuation report, after I've sent him all this with the existing lenders' comments on one up the road, he didn't see any evidence I cannot see any evidence to suggest a different valuation. The yield used is justified by comparable evidence, even though he's got one that I've just sent him with one up the road.
I know, mate, yeah.
And it's just infuriating. So then now I would always get the building fully let, get all the ASTs together, get all the EPCs, get all the evidence, and then all the other comparables, and just send them the whole lot before as well, and say, look, this is what I'm expecting to come out the back of it. I can happily show you around and show you the finish. And if you can, try and do that. And even I'd rather pay 400 quid for a desktop valuation to agree in principle. And that's where I think commercial valuations give you a bit more flexibility than using someone who's VAS, which you may get a slightly cheaper rate, but sometimes it's not worth paying out 3 or 4 grand for a valuation. That ain't going to give you
good valuations through VAS, though. You still get commercial valuations through VAS.
Yeah, you can, but it's definitely more restricted. Sorry, Jack.
I would just say for the listeners out there, sometimes there is just valuers that you just need to move on and get someone else to do it. Yeah. Like we've helped valuers get to a point where they understand the deal. We tell them a story. This is the deal. This is how we create the value. But sometimes you just get absolute burks that you just don't want to work with again, and make note of them, because we actually request that we go to a surveying firm, a VAS panel, and we go, we don't work with this firm, this firm, this firm. Just full stop, because you do get that. One of the first deals I ever did, I got a valuation on a 4-story house that was buying for 500 grand, and they valued the GDV at 450, which basically valued the conversion to 4 flats at about 100k per flat. And I was like, if you stood outside Reading train station and sold these flats for 100 grand, you'd sell them all in an hour cash. Like, that is just, it's a third of the value of what they should be. So, and no way am I going to get them up to £1 million GDV. So I just moved on, waste of money. Obviously we actually put in a complaint where we requested a refund, didn't get it, but I just wanted to sort of tarnish his name. And then moved on with a new valuer. That's the easiest thing to do. And like Stuart said, it's quite common that people get a desktop or a guide valuation from someone that you instruct to put a value to something, and then give that valuation to the external valuer that the bank are bringing, because it adds justification. And if you've got a third party that's Rick's chartered, even though you've instructed them and they're bringing it in more realistically, that will still help that new valuer bring in a good valuation.
Doing that model, like doing what Jack just said there, it would have cost me £4,000, then £4,000. I might as well pay £2,000 for a desktop, get something that's going to help me have one bite of the cherry and work with someone, rather than just keep chewing through different valuers. Because we've got a list of like 4 now, we just won't bother touching, and when they're on the list, I'm like, ignore them, because they're just imbeciles, or they're just too risk averse. They're not realists in this world, in a moving market. They just always want to protect themselves first, which is just not really good for any of us.
Fuckers, mate. But yeah, anyway, that's that sorted. Thank you, Sophia Miranda, for your question. Next question from Advance Agency. Who would be your go-to lenders for... That's actually quite fitting, is it? So who would be your go-to lenders for investment loans for buy-to-let, HMOs and social housing supported living? If you have any deal examples of rates, LTV terms, that would be great. So start with Jack.
So is this debt? Rear-end debt?
Maybe both, mate.
Yeah. So, I mean, with acquisition finance, we normally just go to market. We love lenders that are very pragmatic. Depending on the project, if it's a JV, we won't gear it really high. If it's our own project, we'll gear it as high as possible, because then our IRR is stronger. obviously adjusted to the scheme and risk relevant to make sure that it's not too risky. And we I would highly suggest just going to a broker that's got good relationships in the market. Not only that you are paying them a fee, but they should be able to hopefully add value to negate that fee, whether it's negotiating terms, negotiating rates, whatever that may be. And we can recommend a good broker that's a mutual friend of all of ours. But that's for the acquisition stuff, and it's a pretty open market. And there's sort of people that are good at certain times. You will find with banks generally, the busier they are, the higher the rates that they will push. So they can actually fluctuate the rates on how busy they are in the market. They only have a certain amount of team, and rather than hiring more in the team, they'll just push their rate slightly higher up. So that's on the acquisition stuff. On the exit stuff, we found that Kent Reliant is our old sturdy ship. We always use Kent Reliant on the back end. We for our social. One other thing about exit finance is you can almost categorically say the lower the rate, the worse the process, and it's kind of like that relationship that you have to have. So, for an example, Shawbrook, slow as hell, but the rates are great. And if you're going to lock something in for 5 years, it's probably worth the wait of the rates. So, for exit finance for HMOs, we tend to look at Kent Reliant, Paragon, Shawbrook, Hampshire Trust Bank, all of those alike. I would completely avoid Yorkshire Building Society. They fucked us around for 8 months on a deal and didn't actually end up lending. Octane are pretty good on exit finance. They're actually really competitive on refurbishment finance at the moment, Octane. And then as far as social housing goes, we've got products with Cambridge and Counties, Shawbrook, Redwood, LHV Bank. All of those are like 70-75% loan to rent-based valuation for social housing stock. Normally around sort of talk about rates. So our HMO rates are around 5% at the moment, a couple in, as well as our social housing products are about 2% in, and annoyingly about 6% per annum, but that's a 5-year fixed.
Nice. D?
Yeah, there's no point me adding on to those really. And as Jack said, get yourself a good broker. I still recommend that you build your own knowledge up too, because not everyone's gonna have it right. But so I won't really add any more lenders. What I will provide though is a decent document that comes out every year. It used to be hard form. I don't know if they still do hard form, but it's definitely a virtual. It's called Lender Index. It's more for like bridging and development finance stuff, but still, it's a very useful booklet. Really, it's not exhaustive. It doesn't have every lender in there, but it is really good. It's called Lender. Just type in www.lenderindex.co.uk. It's like a 120 odd page book. Has a matrix at the end, just telling you all the different lenders, what their key terms are, from like what they offer, what their rates range from, what their loan to values range from, loan to GDV, loan to cost, what the arrangement fees are, and some key things of what they accept. Do they accept listed buildings? Do they blah blah? It's a free book. It's not exhaustive. You still work with a broker, but it's definitely worth you understanding. At least something from that matrix.
Nice. Stu?
Nice. I heard of that. I'm just having a little look now online. Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, I would recommend having a few different brokers, because they all, even though they have all the main commercial lenders that Jack's mentioned, I think, which we've used half of those, I would say he's mentioned. Interbay, I think, was the only one that wasn't mentioned, but having a few different brokers in different circles, they have got sort of niche deals with people that they've met in their career. So they actually have some smaller, especially for bridging and stuff. There's a lot of Jewish family, small family offices, people who are actually lend in this space. So we, depending on what we're refinancing or what we're needing debt for, we'll go out to the right broker in that type of field. So you get some of them that deal with more of the sort of vanilla mortgages, and they get good rates, and most of them will set you up on a pretty decent deal. Then it's a relationship with the broker of how much you pay them as part of their fee. Some of them will do a percentage back, so you're sort of splitting the fee they make. And then some of them have got these little niche markets where we find that they will lend fast. They'll work with our type of character of a company. So the developer lender will get some preferential terms. But yeah, just having good broker relationships and let that be someone else's problem. Let them go and do the hard work for you, present you 3 or 4, and then talk through which one is going to be best suited for your development.
Nice. I'd add Land Bay and Lend Invest as well. We've had good experience with Land Bay before. And the only thing I'd say, so all of the ones Jack's used, we've pretty much also used, other than Paragon, who we've had quoted on things before, but they seem to, at least from our experience, they really want vanilla ownership structures. They don't like complicated shareholdings and things like that. So Paragon, although they offered some of the best terms, they can be a bit funnier if you've got especially any shareholders, even with a minority percentage overseas, or even if you just have like 50-50 shareholder agreements, things like that. They have been funny with us before. Kent Reliance we've had similar experience with, where they seem to want quite vanilla ownership structures, but again, good rates. But I think I like Shawbrook, Lend Invest, Landbay, Interbay, HTB. They seem to be
We're
sort of
doing
risk on
one.
when it comes to values.
We're doing one with Interbay now, and they're really, really slow and difficult and anal. There's this lack of common sense, but that's the same with all lenders, really. It's like our mortgage offer was expiring. Our mortgage offer expiry, our valuation expiry date was before our offer expiry. So valuation expires the 1st September, offer expires end of September, and we're like, can we extend? Can you just honor the 30th of September? They're like, no, you'll have to get a new valuation done. Like, all right, okay, that's really irritating. Can we just start the valuation process now? Because my long stop position is the 25th of September, so we can't go over that, and it'll take a few weeks to get the valuation sorted. No, you can't start the valuation process until your current valuation is expired. I'm like, what? What are you on about? That is crazy.
Fuckers. Fucking hate that.
Anyway, so I kicked off, solicitors kicked off, their solicitors kicked off, and in the end they extended. So it's just crazy. But it was
I've actually just remembered a little story actually as well, just a quick anecdote. So another lender to throw in the mix would be Octopus, and we're going through one with Octopus at the moment, and we had a bad valuation come back in, and it was actually the underwriter who went, I just don't agree with this, and he sent the asset manager around, and I went and met the asset manager, and the asset manager literally said, I don't know what this value is on about. They're chatting out of shit. They gave us a 270 value, and it should be more like a 360. And he was like, I agree with your values. You've given us 12 tenancy agreements for 5 different properties in the area, proving what rental values you get, etc. And the underwriter and the asset manager worked really well with us and went, look, we want to make this work. So let's restructure the loan. We obviously can't get another valuation, so we're stuck with a 270. But what we will do is give some of the day one up front, and then allow for the rest of the construction costs in arrears, just so that we could get the deal done. So I quite like Octopus, but in that same breath, when the COVID pandemic came in on our first site, we had Octopus lined up to give us the debt on the construction part, and then they pulled out the market, and we didn't get any of our solicitors' fees or valuation fees back. But that was extreme circumstances. But Octopus seemed like the underwriters and the asset managers have some common sense, and they actually want to work with developers, especially if you've got experience. So yeah, shout out to Octopus there. Right, so we've got 12 minutes left, guys, until I know Stuart needs to fly off. And I think we've got 2 more questions. So we could do a quick fire on these. What are you saying?
Yeah.
Sweet.
good.
So Property Deals Daily, thank you for your question, has asked, from a construction conversion perspective, do you have a checklist or list of requirements that you need to see in order to take on a HMO conversion from single let HMO and PD schemes? Let's fly through from Jack.
Do you have a checklist or a list of requirements that you need to see?
Floor plan would be a good start.
Yeah,
Plan,
I rely a lot on the conveyancing process. I'm not one to do 3 weeks work before we get a bid in. I'm a day's work max, get a bid in, get it agreed, and then do all your hard work, because unfortunately there's loads of other players in the market.
Just to clarify the question, are they saying how do you know if the building can be converted into a HMO? Is that what they're trying to say?
I think it's an internal checklist. From a construction conversion perspective, do you have a checklist or list of requirements that you need? So, like, do you have an internal checklist for
maybe like structural engineer, measured building survey,
Right.
Foundation inspection, bits and bobs like that? I mean, we don't. Every site is different. Some sites we're comfortable doing a lot less, and some sites need a lot more. And we sometimes caveat that with what we do. I think that's a extremely broad question. It's very difficult to answer, but yeah, I mean, we have checklists of all the consultants that we need to bring in before we even exchange on a project.
Yeah.
Some projects we exchange without even, I've bought sites without even viewing them before.
Mhm.
So
you're enlightened, though. Yeah, I think over time you're enlightened to the sort of the right type of deal that's going to suit what you want to do to it. So it's one of those things that, I won't do an appraisal on a HMO because I sort of know by doing quite a few of them now that just what we're likely to cost. And if we're 10 grand over or above, it really won't make too much of a difference to the end result of cash flowing. But with the developments or the bigger stuff, we really are trying to focus in on nailing that checklist, if you like, the appraisal document, where we'll go through and put a lot of the things in which you can do per square foot, and then take the anomalies and actually have somewhere to focus on all the things that are likely to catch you out. And if it's the drainage, or if it's it could be anything: suds, sound, location of the noise with the bloody. I mean, we're doing everything, all these reports now. That's why I'm going to rush off to go to Twickenham, then to Windsor. So all these reports that we don't want discharge of conditions, which slow this whole planning process down at the end. We're just trying to give them all up front, even though they're not asked for them. And so now when we're looking at appraisals, I'm taking all this information and knowledge from previous jobs to go, what are they likely to ask for? And let's build all these costs in. Because when you're looking at something, it can be quite overwhelming. There's too much to think about, and then you've got the emotion, the excitement of wanting to buy it for the price you think is right. Where if you could eliminate all that and spend just 2-3 hours on a document that you refer to, and there is no cheat sheet to property development. It's doing it, learning from it, and adding it to your sheet. So the more you do, the more you can add. And if you have a master spreadsheet with all of these things you need to allow for, and you've done deal 5, deal 6, deal 7, and there's still new things being added, you simply add it to your master sheet, and then the next time you do an appraisal, you're thinking about it, and it might not be relevant, but you've got that sort of core list of things to sort of get your brain engaged on every development. It's just a sense check, really. But yeah, we've got one of them for the developments, but not for the HMOs, because they're pretty straightforward.
What about you,
I mean, we could kind of just read through our Excel sheet of all the costs that are allocated that you either fill in for us.
Don't really think we got the time to do that, Jack. Have we?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like it's kind of
I'm sure Ryan said, "Let's make this quick."
Bullet
Jack,
question.
hang on, let me just read through.
That's why I'm an appreciated lover, Dorian.
D, you got anything to add for this one?
We got a checklist for the development process. We just have a checklist. Yeah, a lot of it's done desktop, more to do with land and planning stuff. We have obviously an appraisal for our development. We have a really detailed cost breakdown for our developments. We have a lot of data behind it now. I think when anyone starts in any niche or any strategy they do, they'll always end up, and I recommend it too, developing your own form of checklist. And then over time, when you're a bit comfortable and confident, they will start falling away on like the buy-to-let, BRR, HMO stuff. But developments, there's a lot you need to and heavy refurbs in a way. There's a lot you need to capture to make sure that you can. I think the biggest problem with the developments, the checklist is to make sure you can legally do it, and it's all about de-risking the legal process and not getting knocked down in the planning process. But with sites where there's like no planning or it's PD, it's a lot different. I mean, with PD, the key things that you need to sort out to know if you can get PD or not. So it's a bit easier.
I'd say I could probably answer this quite clearly. I think if the question's difficult to understand exactly what they're talking about, but
the answer is yes.
Yes, you do need checklists. But for HMO specifically, where you know what the product is that you're going for, compared to a development where you might buy a site, you got an idea, but what you end up building might be completely different to when you actually bought the site. You might find things in the discovery process through surveys, things like that. So developments, just put them to one side. HMOs, though, you should know if you're buying this site that it's going to be a 5-bed, 6-bed, 7-bed, or 8-bed. You should know. Otherwise, you're not got enough knowledge yet, so don't buy the site. But if you know what you're going for, then there's a standard checklist of things that you should be getting from the surveying standpoint to understand the construction, i.e. digital survey, full measurements, measure all the windows, roof survey. Once you've bought the asset, intrusive survey for any unknowns, like getting into the loft. If you've got no loft access, you might need to punch up into the loft. If there's any signs of subsidence or anything, you might need to do trial pits. So you can create a standard checklist that will work for every single site, and we have those, and they all have to be ticked off before it goes to construction for tendering. So you can do things to make sure that once you get into every site, you're armed with all of the information you need for the contractor to be able to make the right decision on the costs. And you really do want to front load that information and get it accurate. Then also get your specification sheet, your scope of works, your floor plans, nice and itemized, clean and tidy, with as much information as possible. Because then if you're giving that along with the site survey details to your contractor, then they should be giving you a fixed price against an understood scope of works. If you lack any part of that, if you don't get the roof survey, let's say with a drone, and then that's not picked up by the contractor, they'll come back later and go, oh, another 12 grand for the roof, or another this, another that. So I would say there are things
Just
that you
a
can
little
capture.
top tip on the HMO stuff. A good friend of mine, Ed, based on the South Coast, he's got a company called HMO Designers. He's just launched a platform app, whatever you want to call it, called HMO Checker. But he basically, all the things like sizes, roof extensions, you basically put it in, you can find assets easier, Article 4 directions, planning applications in local. He basically extrapolates the information on accepted planning applications for HMOs in local area and sort of gives you a ratio of likelihood of getting planning. Check that out.
Yeah, cool tool that. All right. But anyway, hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Last one, we'll make this one quick. So another HMO one. So Sellers Direct. Thank you for your question. With HMO conversions, when do I need a license and when do I need HMO planning permission? I sometimes have heard people saying you only need to apply for a license to operate as a HMO. It would be good to hear some practical advice on when to pursue either option. Let's split this into two because there are two parts to this. I can answer this quite quickly by saying
I'll
yes.
bow out.
No, go on, D. Go on, D. You answer
No,
it. Go on.
I'll bow out to this one between you three.
No worries.
With your masterclass knowledge, you'll nail this.
So just quickly on the first part, and I think Stuart and Jack will just agree with this. You are lawfully allowed, so long as you've got the necessary planning permission and you're not in an Article 4, you are allowed to rent out the rooms in a HMO so long as you have the right certifications, electrical, gas, building control certificates. As long as you've got those FRA reports, you can rent out the room without having the license, as long as you've proven to submit for the license and have that in written confirmation back from the council. And that is our understanding. It's worked every time.
Works slightly different for us. We're allowed to let all the rooms up to the 5th room, and then we actually have to have the license in hand before we let the 5th and 6th room.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're below the license threshold up to 4 rooms, you can do that. But once you get to 5, 6 rooms, as long as you've submitted for the license, you can let them out. And the lender is also satisfied with that, as long as you've got written confirmation from the council that you've submitted for it. And that can be a bit of a ball ache. However, in saying that, we've seen a horror story recently where the councils just have not been giving out these licenses. They'll take the submissions, but they're taking literally years to give the licenses. And then the council then wrote to all of the tenants at the property saying there is an RRO, a rental reversal order, because it's not a licensed property. So because of the council's incompetence to not issue the license, they've then gone to the tenants and said that this is not a lawfully licensed HMO, therefore you're all owed rent back from the landlord. So you have got to be slightly careful if you've not got that license in place. As for planning, you need to know if you need planning. If you're in Article 4, you need planning. If you're going for a sui generis, you need planning. The second part of this, though, I don't actually know, and I tried asking ChatGPT, but it says, also, does Article 4 prevent either HMO being possible on a conversion, as sometimes I hear people being able to do this on a technicality? I feel like it's a bit of a grey area. I don't actually know. If you're in Article 4, can you rent 4 rooms? And obviously the 5th and 6th room, I don't know how it works.
A lot of Article 4 areas are also have selective licensing as well, though, don't they? So it would trigger. If you typically, it could be anomalies, but normally, if there's an area with Article 4, they've also typically got selective licensing. So it may be those that don't have selective licensing, it falls through, if that makes sense, and they'll only ever spot it if tenants complain. But most of the time, it's the selective licensing which catches it out, because you have to apply to the council, obviously, for that. And also, heads up, if anyone's listening, in Wales, there is no PD for C3 to C4. Everything is full planning. So it's basically Article 4 the entire country. So because of that, you can have some areas that aren't selective licensing, but you still need full planning anyway. So
a lot of people think the Article 4 direction is purely to prevent HMOs to be converted under prior approval. That you need to look at the wording for the Article 4 direction, because I've seen Article 4 direction where they're limiting office conversions, but not HMOs. And I've seen Article 4 directions where they're stopping HMOs and not office conversions. And I've seen Article 4 where they're trying to prevent both. So you need to read the detail on that. I mean, my view is, why do you want a HMO in an Article 4 area with the license if you're not going to go down the route of planning anyway? That's what Ryan and I basically concluded on. It goes hand in hand. It's not a very scalable business model to try and do something from a licensing perspective and not from a planning perspective.
Yeah, you definitely want. As far as I understand it, if you're in Article 4, get planning permission, and then follow the due process, and then you can submit for the license and rent it out whilst you're submitting the license, etc. But if you're in Article 4, just get the planning, tackle it head on
I guess what
first.
they're saying, you could buy a property, let out 4 bedrooms, be an unlicensed HMO, which the council won't necessarily know about if you get their consent. So personally, I'd rather get the council's consent for that. You could then let it out for 4 years, and then you could do a certificate of lawful use application to show that you're an unlicensed HMO for 4 years. Then get full. You technically then got right to consent for certificate of lawful use. Then you go for loft conversion, dormer extension, 6-bed HMO retrospectively, and I mean that's probably the angle that they're going down.
Yeah. So yeah, weird one. There are grey areas all over property, so just be careful. And in this scenario, I just advise ask a planning consultant. Anything we're unsure on, whenever we buy something, I give it to the planning consultant, and for free, they'll give me a high level on what we can and can't do based on that area. So that should help you. Anyway, that brings us to the end of episode 21. This was the 1% target, was it, D?
It was, yeah. And sorry, while she was talking about the last question, I've just been cleaning up that pissing confetti. So that's where you've seen me.
Pissing confetti.
Pissing confetti, like. I mean, this is episode 21.
Sorry, if you're in Henley, then that bleaming confetti.
But this was the goal. Apparently, podcasts rarely get to episode 21, and apparently it's 1% of podcasts. Is it, D, that you found out?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
21, which is mad. So we got it.
Of podcast producers, and you can actually start seeing a bit of the uptick in questions and engagement and messages, can't you?
Yeah. Instagram's flying as well. It's going to hit 500 followers soon, which is nice. Thank you to anyone who engaged with this podcast, and always let us know if we can do a better job. Give us constructive feedback. Feel free to criticize where you need to and ask questions, and hopefully we'll do a good job answering them. But yeah, episode 21, fucking beautiful. Nicely done, lads. It feels like yesterday when we started this thing.
I know it's been 5 months now. It must be. It's got to be around that, isn't it? 5-6 months.
Nuts. Well, it's the next
continue.
21.
Let's do it.
Let's all go make some money.
Nice one, gang. See you later. Thanks for watching. Big love.
Bye-bye.
Big one.
Ground up sound.